The diner was a cozy haven, tucked away on a quiet street in a small town that time seemed to have forgotten. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the scent of bacon sizzling on the grill, filling the air with warmth. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, casting a golden glow on the checkered floor. Sarah moved gracefully between tables, her smile as warm as the steaming mugs she carried. She was the heart of the diner, known for her kindness and the way she made every customer feel like family. Among the regulars was a silent old man who came in every morning. He always sat in the same spot, a booth by the window, where he could watch the world go by. He never spoke, never ordered, but Sarah always knew what he wanted. A simple plate of eggs and toast with a cup of black coffee. For weeks, she had served him without question, without payment, just kindness. She didn't know his name, but she called him Mr. Thompson in her mind, a name she had given him to make him feel less like a stranger. Sarah's life wasn't easy. The diner was struggling, bills were piling up, and she was a single mother trying to make ends meet for her young son, Jake. The worn countertops bore the scars of years of service, and the faded sign outside creaked in the wind. She counted the earnings each night, her brow furrowing as the numbers fell short, but she never let her worries show. Instead, she poured her heart into her work, believing that kindness was the one thing she could always afford to give. One chilly morning, as Sarah was wiping down the counter, she noticed Mr. Thompson looking particularly downcast. His shoulders were hunched, and his eyes were fixed on the empty street outside. She approached him quietly, setting down a fresh cup of coffee. "Good morning, sir. The usual today?" she asked, her voice soft. He didn't respond, but she slid a plate in front of him anyway, her eyes crinkling with a smile. "On the house," she whispered, knowing he had no money to pay. She wondered about him often. His hands, though weathered, had a certain elegance, and once she'd seen him reading a tattered newspaper with articles circled in red ink. She didn't pry, though. Everyone had their story, and she figured his silence was his way of keeping it close. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah's own troubles began to mount. A letter arrived, slipped under the diner's door one night, its crisp white envelope a stark contrast to the greasy floor. It was from a corporation that had been buying up properties in the town, demanding payment for protection services. The words were veiled in polite legalese, but the threat was clear: pay up or lose everything. Sarah's stomach churned as she read it, her fingers trembling. She hid the letter in a drawer, not wanting to worry her lone cook, Maria, or the handful of regulars who depended on the diner as much as she did. One afternoon, as the lunch rush slowed, two men in dark suits entered the diner. Their polished shoes clicked against the floor, and the air seemed to grow heavy with their presence. Sarah was refilling salt shakers when they approached, their shadows falling over her. "We're here to collect," one of them said, his voice low and menacing like the rumble of distant thunder. Sarah's heart raced, but she straightened up, meeting his gaze. "I don't have the money right now," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "But I'll get it to you as soon as I can." The man leaned in, his breath hot and sour. "You'd better, or this little place of yours won't be standing much longer." His partner smirked, cracking his knuckles for effect. From his booth, Mr. Thompson watched, his fork pausing mid-air. Sarah caught his eye, a flicker of concern passing between them, but she forced a smile and turned back to the men. "I'll figure it out," she said firmly. They lingered a moment longer, then left, the door slamming shut behind them. The diner fell silent, the only sound the hiss of the grill and the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. That night, as Sarah locked up, she sat at the counter with the ledger open in front of her. The numbers stared back, unyielding. Rent, overdue, suppliers unpaid, and now this new debt. She could stop serving Mr. Thompson, save a few dollars each day, but the thought made her stomach twist. "Everyone deserves a little kindness," she murmured to herself, closing the book with a sigh. The next morning dawned cold and gray. the sky heavy with the promise of rain. Sarah arrived early, flipping on the lights and starting the coffee maker. Mr. Thompson shuffled in at his usual time, his coat threadbare but neatly buttoned. She served him with a quiet nod, her mind still on the men from the day before. The diner hummed with its usual rhythm, plates clattering, regulars chatting, until the sound of heavy engines shattered the peace. 4 sleek black SUVs rolled to a stop outside, their tinted windows reflecting the diner's neon sign. The air thickened as the doors swung open, and men in crisp suits stepped out, their movements synchronized and purposeful. Sarah's hand trembled as she set down a coffee pot, her eyes darting to Mr. Thompson. He sat still, staring at his plate, but there was a tension in his shoulders she hadn't seen before. The bell above the door jingled, sharp and ominous. The men scanned the room, their gazes landing on Mr. Thompson. Sarah's heart pounded so loud she thought they must hear it. She wanted to rush to his side, to shield him from whatever was coming, but her feet felt rooted to the spot. The other customers fell silent, forks hovering, eyes wide. One of the men, tall with a stern face and a badge glinting at his belt, stepped forward. "Mr. Thompson," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. To Sarah's shock, the old man looked up, his eyes meeting the stranger's. Slowly he stood, his back straightening, shedding the frailty he'd worn like a second skin. "It's time," he said, his voice steady and clear, cutting through the stillness like a blade. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. It was the first time she'd heard him speak, and the sound was rich, commanding, not at all what she'd expected from the silent figure she'd come to know. The tall man nodded. "We've been looking for you, sir. You're safe now." Sarah's mind reeled. "Wait, what's going on?" she stammered, stepping forward. "Is he in trouble?" Mr. Thompson turned to her, a gentle smile softening his weathered face. "No, Sarah. These are the good guys. I've been hiding for too long, but thanks to you, I found the courage to do what's right." The tall man, who introduced himself as Agent Harris, gestured for the others to secure the perimeter. "Ma'am, this is Mr. Edward Thompson, former executive at Crestwood Industries. He's a key witness in a case against the corporation, one that's been extorting businesses like yours for years. His testimony is going to bring them down." Sarah's knees weakened and she gripped the counter for support. "Crestwood, the ones who sent those men yesterday?" Agent Harris nodded, his expression grim. "Yes. They've been bleeding. This town dry and others like it. Mr. Thompson came to us with evidence, documents, recordings, but he went into hiding after they threatened his life. We've been tracking him ever since." Mr. Thompson stepped closer, his eyes locking with hers. "I was part of that machine once," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "When I found out what they were doing, ruining lives, destroying communities, I couldn't stay silent. But they came after me and I lost everything. I ended up here, afraid to trust anyone. Then I met you." Sarah blinked back tears, her throat tight. "Me? Your kindness," he continued. "Day after day, no questions, no judgment. It reminded me there's still good in this world. Yesterday when you stood up to those thugs, I saw your strength. It made me realize I couldn't keep running. I contacted the feds last night because of you." Agent Harris placed a hand on Mr. Thompson's shoulder. "Thanks to him, we're dismantling Crestwood. Your diner, this town, they're free of them now." The weight of his words crashed over Sarah like a wave. She looked at Mr. Thompson, then at the agents, then back again, her mind struggling to catch up. I just gave you some food," she whispered, almost to herself. He shook his head, his smile widening. "You gave me hope, Sarah. That's more than you know." As the agents prepared to leave, Mr. Thompson reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. "This is for you," he said, pressing it into her hands. "A thank you." Before she could protest, he followed the agents. Outside, the SUVs roared to life, their engines a low growl as they pulled away, leaving the street quiet once more. Sarah stood frozen, the envelope trembling in her grasp. She opened it slowly, revealing a check, enough to pay off the diner's debts, and more. But it was the note inside that stopped her heart. "Dear Sarah, your kindness changed my life. Keep spreading it. It changes the world." The days that followed were a blur. Word spread fast, and soon the diner was packed with people, not just regulars but newcomers drawn by the story of the waitress and the silent man who'd brought down a corporate giant. The local paper ran a headline, "Kindness saves the day," and donations poured in to keep the diner afloat. But it wasn't just about the money. Something shifted in the town. People began to help each other, neighbors fixing fences, kids collecting cans for charity, strangers sharing smiles. It was as if Sarah's quiet compassion had lit a fire, warming the whole community. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold, Sarah stood behind the counter pouring coffee for a new face. The diner buzzed with life, laughter mingling with the clink of dishes. She thought of Mr. Thompson, wherever he was, and the journey that had brought them here. Her fears, her flaws, the despair of those dark days, they'd all led to this moment of joy. The bell jingled as another customer stepped inside, and Sarah greeted them with her trademark smile. In a world that often felt cold and uncertain, she knew one truth above all. A single act of kindness could spark a change that echoed far beyond the walls of her little diner.